Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin, and this episode 448. I'm joined by nobody today. Prez is out. Prez is busy this week. He is work in real life is kicking his butt. So I am here to carry through this episode. But before we get started, I do have to make a few announcements. First being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may watch this podcast. If you are not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Circle, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord with conversation or stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks more. You also get access to one of our premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, which you guessed it is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Konstantin Mechkos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. There's a variety of additional benefits like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially goes to a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, it's absolutely possible that you. And that's only possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, well, the Knicks are now 15-10. They lost 108 to 100 in frustrating fashion to the Atlanta Hawks in the quarterfinals of the NBA Cup at Madison Square Garden on Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday. It's a frustrating loss, and it's the second time they lost to the Hawks. Who, credit to the Hawks, they've played much better lately. They have 2 wins against Cleveland. They've beaten Boston. They've now beaten the Knicks twice. So, we will talk. I mean, I've talked about why I think the Hawks give the Knicks problems, but the Hawks seem to be giving several teams problems, a lot of good teams even. And that's something worth considering, not to excuse the Knicks loss, but more maybe don't dismiss it as they lost to a shit team or a bad team or an average team. Or I mean, maybe they are. Maybe they'll end up being an average team, but they certainly haven't played like one lately. Okay, moving beyond that. After that loss, obviously, there's been a lot of discussions about this team, the up and down nature of it, their inconsistencies. Are they tough? They were absolutely destroyed on the glass by Atlanta in this game, especially in the second half. Gave 22 offensive rebounds to the Hawks. Pretty brutal, especially, I mean, some of the sequences in the fourth quarter where the Hawks are getting 3 and 4 offensive rebounds at a time. And I saw this comparison, and it's not unfair. It was like looking into the mirror of the past couple of years Knicks teams, which were both extremely good offenses, but they were extremely good in ways that they are not now. They were really good because they got a ton of extra possessions on the offensive glass, not because they were particularly great or efficient from the field in terms of scoring as a team. This year's teams obviously were different. They've been very, very efficient from the field. I haven't looked up the percentages. I can look it up now, but second in field goal percentage, second in 3-point percentage, on and on and on. Basically every offensive metric has them as a top 1, 2, or 3 team in terms of scoring efficiency, shooting efficiency, you name it. So losing in that way, I think, is particularly galling to Knicks fans who had become accustomed to and familiarized really with what the identity of this team had become, and how it had developed over 3 years, 4 years, I should say, of Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau kind of spearheading this Knicks rebuild. They had built it in smart ways. They had kind of played their assets tight and all this stuff. And so not only did the identity of the team on the court shift, I think also the kind of stakes have shifted because, for 4 years, the Knicks, and look, obviously they made a big swing for OG Anunoby, but if we're realistic about it, they gave up Manuel Quickly and RJ Barrett, who good players, love IQ. I think RJ has definitely done better for himself in Toronto than he showed in New York. So it's not like the Knicks gave up nothing, but you still felt pretty secure because they didn't give up future first round picks. They still had that draft cupboard full, relatively speaking. And now, after the season, right, the Knicks trade all of their future picks, unprotected, plus that Milwaukee pick, plus a swap in 2028 for Mikal Bridges. I'm on the record of saying this, and I will repeat it. I would not have done that trade. I understand why the Knicks did it, but I would not have done it. And I think a lot of Knicks fans feel that way about it, where you maybe even if you, and there are fans that might not even understand it. I'm sure there are fans that loved the trade in real time too. But I think there are a lot of fans that understand the trade, but were not comfortable with the value or would not have done it at that value. I am in that boat, and that's just where I am, and I'll probably forever be, unless the Knicks win a championship and Mikal Bridges is fucking crushing it while that's happening. So that's part of it, right? The other part is obviously they do this huge trade for Cat, and the Cat trade shouldn't just be looked at isolation, because not because I think they would have done the trade no matter what, but it can't be looked in isolation because part of the reason that trade became so critical for the Knicks to execute was Mitch Robinson is out injured. We don't know when he's going to be back. It's unlikely he'll be back until at least late January. So, that was an issue. Precious Achiuwa actually got hurt right before the season started, so that would have become an issue. And then Jericho Sims, I think he's given you as much as you can expect, but he's just not a guy you want to depend on in your rotation, certainly not as a starting center ever. And that was the situation the Knicks were left in because Isaiah Hartenstein left in free agency, which the Knicks had no control over, right? They could not match the offer that Oklahoma City gave him, and therefore he left. Like that's it. There's really nothing else to discuss there. The Knicks made the best offer they could, and he got an offer so rich that it was just worth it for him to go. So he went to the shittiest state in the country in Oklahoma. So I'm hoping he's enjoying it. That's that. So you make the Karl Anthony Towns trade. Now, Towns has been spectacular for the Knicks, arguably the Knicks' best player this season. But he's not Isaiah Hartenstein. He's not Mitchell Robinson. He is extremely, extremely different from these players on both sides of the floor, right? He is not a good drop defense. Like, he's not good in drop coverage defensively. That's been the case for his entire career. That is the case right now. He has improved defensively. I think he's better now defensively than he has been at various points in his career. But he's still not, he's not an upper echelon defensive center. I think at best you're just talking about a guy who's average defensively. And even that is probably slightly generous. I think he's a below average defensive center, but he does try. He does compete. I don't think he is a space cadet out there. I think he's doing his best. He just has limitations. And you live with those limitations because offensively, he is fantastic. He has been fantastic for the Knicks. He has been efficient. He has cut down on his turnovers. He's been a playmaking hub, something that the Knicks, I think obviously everybody understood the defensive side of Isaiah Hartenstein, the rebounding side of Isaiah Hartenstein, but that playmaking, yeah, we understood that too, but not just what the playmaking he provided, but that kind of spacing it gave where it allowed Brunson to play off the ball. And because Hartenstein's such a good screener, you still had to kind of come out and defend higher up. You couldn't just have your big sit down in the paint. Karl Anthony Towns gives you all of that. Now, he's not the screener that Hartenstein is, obviously. But in terms of his offensive value, his gravity as a scorer, and then the playmaking that it opens up and the spacing it opens up, it has all been on full display. He has been a fantastic acquisition for the Knicks. And, there were concerns about trading out Dante and Randall and this Detroit protected first for him. And look, if I'm a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I still would not be that worried about Dante. Like, I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to have a strong season. I think he's too good a shooter with enough of a track record where you got to believe that he's going to bounce back over the course of a full season. The Randall thing is the Randall thing. But as it stands, I don't really have any regrets about the trade. If anything, I feel really positive, really good about that trade. And I think it's one that is ultimately a feather in the cap for Leon Rose, at least as things stand right now. Maybe that changes. I don't anticipate it will, because as good as Dante is, he is not as impactful as Cat. And I'm fully okay with getting off the Julius Randle roller coaster ride. Salute to him, though, for everything he did for the Knicks. So you have this shifting identity of the team, right? And now it's on both ends of the floor, where you kind of knew exactly what you were defensively, right? You've got these elite rim protectors, these guys that are really, really good at boxing out and all this stuff. And you're going to, and then offensively, yeah, you know what? We might not be the most talented. We might not be the best scoring team. We might not be the most efficient team. But what we're going to do is we're going to keep winning the possession battle. And because we can win the possession battle, we have enough offensive talent. We have enough shot making that gives us an elite offense. So you had a formula of a team that you understood and had been developed and really kind of put in place and installed over years. You're talking about, okay, this is not like this didn't just happen last year. This is a fundamental core identity that had been established starting in 2020, 2021, the COVID season, Tibbs' first season, Leon Rose's first season, and had been fleshed out over the course of 4 years. And let's not forget that over the course of those 4 years, I mean, that first year is obviously kind of magical in its own way, but that team was terrible offensively. They were 23rd in offensive rating. They were not a good offense, and we saw the limitations of what it was in their short-lived playoff series against these Hawks. I guess not these Hawks. The Hawks, much like the Knicks, have undergone much change since then. The next year, they tried to make an attempt to get more dynamic offensively, right? And that is signing Evan Fournier, signing Kemba Walker, and we all know that did not pan out, did not work out. Julius Randle completely craters that season. Knicks drop off. They go 37-45, miss the playoffs entirely. And then the next offseason, it's like, all right, well, we need to, our backup center is a disaster right now. The point guard situation is a disaster. We need to address these things. So they signed Jalen Brunson and they signed Isaiah Hartenstein. And guess what? Things didn't get off to a swimming start. The Knicks are 10-13 in 2022-23. And we're talking about hand up, hand raised. I am fucking banging the table. We got to fire Tibbs. We got to fire Tibbs. We got to fire Tibbs. He's not playing the right young guys. He's not giving these young guys opportunities, blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't just that. You can go back. If you're fucking bored, you can go back and probably look through my Twitter and find tweets of me talking about this defensive scheme is outdated. They are giving up corner threes at a whim. And like, if this is the scheme, then they're just going to have more nights like this, especially because it looked like they completely cratered an embarrassing loss to drop to 10-13 to the Mavericks. And it looked like the team had kind of mailed it in, to be honest, that fourth quarter especially. They have a game the next day against Cleveland, coming in with Donovan Mitchell, who the Knicks famously did not trade for the previous summer, who was an MVP candidate at that time. And lo and behold, Tibbs makes a bunch of rotation changes, plays the young guys more, and boom, season takes off. All of a sudden, the Knicks defensive scheme is executed at a better level. And, you know, they go from 10-13 to 47-35, win a playoff series, lose the second round to Miami. Following year, basically the same team comes back. They swap out Obi for Dante. And guess what? Team was kind of up and down to start the year. They were 17-15, and then they trade for OG Anunoby. They trade Mayo quickly and RJ Barrett for OG Anunoby. And boom, team goes off. And I think to some degree, the OG trade has maybe spoiled us a little bit. And not spoiled us in the sense of, like, maybe not spoiled is the wrong word, but it has maybe kind of altered how we think trades should work. And sometimes trades do work like this. Sometimes trades do have immediate positive impact. It's not always the case, though, especially seismic changes, seismic trades. But OG comes in, Knicks obviously just fucking go boom. They finish 50-32. He's a huge piece of that. They win their first round series against Philly, and then they lose to Indiana in the second round. Probably win that series if they don't all fucking get hurt, but they did. It is what it is. Whatever. They lose that series. Obviously, I just outlined everything that happened this summer. So kind of felt good about where that team was. Even after the Indiana series, I think everybody was kind of of the understanding of like, yes, there's stuff that, maybe we need to get a better second option, and maybe Randall's not that guy, and there's all that stuff to figure out. But you felt good about kind of the general identity of the team in both, and not just did you feel good about it, but you knew what it was. You knew what the general identity of the Knicks was on both ends of the floor. And you're okay. Well, you know what? We just need to be healthy. If we're healthy with this squad and some changes we can make, we'll be right back there and we can push Boston. And that opportunity never came because Isaiah Hartenstein left. Like, that's just it. Like, the reality is we never were going to have the opportunity to be the same team once Hartenstein left. It's a fact. And maybe Mitch can come back and he gives you some of that, especially the offensive rebounding, obviously. Both offensive and defensive rebounding, I should say, on both sides, and the rim protection and blah, blah. But I think it's, for me personally, I'm comfortable saying that at best he's a part-time player now. He's a guy who comes off the bench, gives you 18, 20 minutes max. You just can't really push him, and you probably don't want to push him much beyond that, given his numerous injury issues. So because you don't have that opportunity to run it back, you make these changes. Your team is entirely different now, right? So you've got Jalen Brunson running point still. Josh Hart is now in the starting lineup. OG is too, but you've got this stretch five who is not he's a below average defender. And then you bring in Mikal Bridges, who is a really good player, probably overpaid for him. But very specifically, while he's a very good player, he is not the same player as the guy he's replacing in the starting lineup, who is Dante DiVincenzo. And that's really, really important to know, okay? Because Tibbs had a very clear idea of how to use Dante. He was right about how he used Dante, and Dante had the best season of his career. And that's not all because of Tibbs. I think the majority of the credit should always go to the player. But Tibbs definitely helped him. And also, I think playing with, his Villanova buddies, and they all had this great ESP on the floor, that helped. I think that 100% helped. And so he has a career season. But Mikal Bridges is not Dante DiVincenzo. He's not the same player. He is not this guy who's just going to catch and shoot at ease with range out to 30 feet. He's not a guy who's going to put up 15 threes per 100 possessions. He is not a guy who is, he's a damn good finisher at the rim, actually, Mikal Bridges. He's a really good finisher at the rim. He's somebody who, while overtaxed as the number one option in Brooklyn, showed you that he had some ability there to, hey, like, I can run some pick and rolls. I can score off the bounce in the mid-range. I can be a 3-level scorer. I can operate with the ball in my hands and be effective, even if you don't want me doing that at a number one option level and maybe not even a number two option level.